Yo, what's up, YouTube? Welcome back to another video. Welcome back to the channel, man. And today we are going to talk about the hottest topic. We're going to ride that wave of that C8 ZR1, man. And if y'all been sleeping on the rock, man, the C8 ZR1 has been announced by Chevrolet, and it is the most powerful Corvette they have made to today's date, man. It makes 1,064 horsepower, man. So right there alone, with that being said, it sounds crazy, but now that has divided a line right there between the car community. Some people believe, like, okay, is this ZR1 a supercar or is the ZR1 a hypercar? And we're going to talk about that. I'm going to share my opinion about it, so let's get into it. So let's sit back and get to the nitty gritty about this C8 ZR1. So we're gonna start out with the basic foundation of everything, because you know we have muscle cars, we have sports cars, we have supercars, and we have hypercars. Muscle cars, y'all know what muscle cars is. That's pretty much more like on the American side, but I feel like the American cars have just left that aside and they're more transitioning into the sports cars. And if we want to talk about sports cars, what really defines a sports car? To me, when I think about a sports car, it goes into like the handling and the precision of it. Some sports cars have four seats. Prime example, like the Mustang and the Camaros, the Dodges. The Dodges is not necessarily like a sports car. I would say like the Dodges out here now is more considered like the last of a muscle car, I would say. But the Mustang and the Camaro has jumped into that sports car realm, so they fit that with the handling and the precision, and they have like the 4 seats and stuff like that, and they have decent acceleration. You know, 0 to 60 in less than 4 seconds, or around 4 seconds, and stuff like that. Now, when we get to the supercars, what do y'all think about supercars? So for me, supercars is more focused on like faster acceleration. It's way faster than your average sports car. The handling is up to par, and usually those supercars are always 2-seaters. There's never a 4-seater supercar. So when you think about stuff like that, that kind of like narrows it down a little bit further. Now, I'm also going to like what defines like the hypercar. Now, a hypercar, I would say, is something that's like bare minimum. Bare minimum, you consider a hypercar when it's like 2 seats, it's light with so much carbon or forged carbon, and 800 horsepower, bare minimum, coming out the factory. So we're not talking about cars that's tuned. We're not talking about cars. We're just going to talk about basic specs of cars just coming out the factory. And out the factory, there's very far and few between cars that's making over 800 horsepower out the factory. So we're going to dump into like some examples of me. What do I consider a supercar? So a supercar to me would be like your Huracan, your 488 GTB by Ferrari, your Aston Martin Vantage, your McLaren 570 S7s, whatever, and then you got your I'm trying to think like your Porsche Cayman or whatever. Like I'm drawing a blank on what it is. Like I think the 718. That's what I consider like a supercar. Okay. It's great on acceleration, great on handling. It's a coupe and things of that nature. And usually they're under like 700 horsepower or less. You know, those are considered supercars. Supercars, body lines are nice. You're not gonna rarely see those on the road, and they come with a high price point. So, hypercars. What do you think about hypercars? When it comes to me, when I think about hypercars usually make over 800 plus. But the examples that I'm thinking of a hypercar that come to mind would be the McLaren P1, the Lafayette by Ferrari, the Bugatti Veyron Sport, and then you got the SF 90. Those are what I consider like hypercars. And based on the C8 ZR1, I feel like it jumped into the hypercar realm. Just on the edge of it though, because right there at the peak. And when you think about all these hypercars that I just named, they're over 800 horsepower. Their 0 to 60 is within the twos. I mean, we talking about between 2.2 to 2.5 or 7, like second range. Those are hypercar numbers. And then on top of that, their top speed ranges from 215 all the way up to 270. So that is technically like, well, ain't no technically. There's really like hypercars right there when you put in that perspective. Yes, if you sit back and think about today's time, like I think Chevrolet was talking about, or I don't know his real numbers or not, that the C8 ZR1 could do a quarter mile in 9.7 seconds. That's pretty impressive coming out the factory. But then again, you got other cars like Dodges and stuff like that. People mod them up and they can get to that number relatively quickly. Or the Nissan GTR, that's another car that comes to mind when I think about Texas 2K that goes down a quarter mile pretty quick. But we're not talking about those. We're talking about straight out the factory. And right now, the C8 leaped and bounds on that, man. So, as we're talking about it, like based on what I gave to you guys, what do you guys think? Do you think the C8 ZR1 is a sports car? Or do you think the C8 ZR1 is a hypercar? Me, I feel like based on the numbers and the examples and what I brought to you guys, I feel like it is more of a hypercar. Based on the specs on paper and the information that we know, the C8 ZR1 is right there neck to neck with a McLaren P1. It's faster than a McLaren Senna, and I would say the McLaren Senna and the Z06 would be like right there with each other. But with the ZR1 now that's coming out, it just made it up there to the P1. Now, when you look at the McLaren P1 and the Senna, there are mostly like subtle differences. Like, okay, the P1 is slightly faster, slightly tops out more, and the Senna is right there. But when you looking at it and when you do the research, the P1 is always better because it got a lot more stuff built into it. It runs on a better tire. It got different fueling and stuff. Now, we don't know how that C8 ZR1 come to get that 1064 number. Is it with E85? Is that with 93? Who knows? Details will be soon to come out. But that is what I'm thinking about, and that's what I consider the C8 being the C8 ZR1 being a hypercar. Now, everything that we know up to this point, I would say between the E-Ray and the Z06, those are like kind of supercar-ish. But this is where a lot of people get caught up where, oh, it's not a supercar because of the mass production aspect. If we sit back and think about cars nowadays, like ever since the pandemic, a lot of cars haven't become readily available, like due to like what's been going on. So I don't think the C8 ZR1 will be mass produced, like even though it's being produced by a mass car manufacturer, which we have known. But for this type of setup, I mean, they've been having a hard time, if you think about it, the supply and demand with the C8s in general. So I don't think we'll be seeing too many of the ZR1s like we think we do. Like, and also I would say like the markup on that will be crazy. We know GM may say one thing, oh, it may be about, me personally, it's another opinion. I feel like the ZR1 would be about 175 to start out, but who gonna do a base model ZR1? I mean, just be honest there. That ZTK package, me personally, is like my favorite one. But with that being said, like the base price, by the time you add all your options, your color specs, and whatever you want to do, the wheels and colors, it's gonna easily be like a 200K car, man. I mean, I just believe that. So with the markup, it's gonna jump up there. So that is my opinion. I believe the C8 ZR1 has finally hit that brim. Like I would say, it's right there at the cuff of being a hypercar based on the specs on paper. So it is a hypercar. I'll put it like that. It is a hypercar at this point because you're not going to see that car any day out here on the street. You may be lucky to see it at the track. See, that's why I like going to these tracks, because I get to see some of these cars all the time running at the track when people decide to bring them out. You're not going to see it on your road, but that's my thoughts on it. I believe the C8 ZR1 is a hypercar. Y'all let me know what y'all think, man. Y'all drop a comment below. And with that, man, that's going to wrap this video up. If you like videos like this, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next video.